Because it feels so personal, this is going to be a difficult video for me to make. I've thought about giving my perspective regarding the John Lasseter sexual allegations for a few weeks, but I haven't been able to muster the courage, mostly out of fear that what I have to say in his defense might be misunderstood. But today, I read an article about the ongoing #MeToo moral panic by Claire Berlinski. The article is called The Warlock Hunt, and it was published by the American Interest on December the 6th. Even though she never mentions Lasseter in the article, Ms. Berlinski elegantly puts to words several of the same concepts that have been on my mind ever since I first learned of the allegations. And so, I have finally found my courage to speak my mind on the topic. I will return to this article in a moment, but first I want to explain to you a little bit about why the Lasseter allegations struck me especially hard. I first met John Lasseter at Pixar headquarters back in 2010 when I was the game director of the forthcoming Cars 2 video game. At that time, the film was still in storyboard and the script was in tremendous flux. My key points of contact at the studio were franchise guardian Jay Ward, producer Denise Ream, and the eventual co-director of the film, John Lasseter. This meant that every couple months over the course of the next year, I was asked to visit Pixar and provide regular updates about the state of the game that we were building. At first, I was really nervous to present to Lasseter because it was well known that the two film franchises with which he is most directly involved are Toy Story and Cars. Those films are known to be his babies. And true to that expectation, John could be very critical of some of the work we had to show him. But at the same time, he was also very encouraging and focused on solutions to the problems he saw. His role was that of both critic and mentor. After a few presentations, and we started to get a sense of what things were important to John, some of the anxiety about presenting to him faded, and our reviews began to feel more like discussions than critiques. I also discovered that John has a very warm and engaging personality, and that when things are going well, he would sometimes start or end a meeting with a pat on the back or a brief hug. And to be completely honest, having John Lasseter tell me, "The game is really shaping up great. Thanks for all your hard work, Troy," followed by a bear hug, has been one of the highlights of my career. By sheer coincidence, one of my presentations to the Cars 2 film team just happened to fall on a celebration day for John. This particular celebration was supposed to be private and restricted only to Pixar employees. But myself and a couple members of the Cars 2 video game team were already on the Pixar campus and were granted permission to stay. The celebration was called John's Half-Life Celebration. It had cake and food and live music. Here are some pictures that I took. The point of the Half-Life celebration was to commemorate how John Lasseter had now spent the last half of his life working and building up Pixar. As part of the opening ceremonies, John took the mic and spoke a bit about how much he loved the people he had worked with over the years, and how proud he was of all the films that they had made to date. He finished his remarks by giving tearful thanks to his dear wife Nancy for all her years of support through both the tough times and the good times. When it came time to announce the Cars 2 video game to the press, John agreed to show his personal support of the project. He surprised everyone in that press event by driving right out onto the show floor in a classic car, and then spoke glowingly about how the team at Avalanche had done such a great job at capturing the feel of the Cars universe that it was a product worthy of the Pixar name. And his words weren't just marketing hype. Back at Pixar, they held internal tournaments among the animators for bragging rights. When the Cars 2 film was released, I, along with several other members of the Cars 2 game team, got invited to the Hollywood premiere and launch party. The game was included as part of those festivities. And say what you will about the reception of the Cars 2 film, but for months afterwards I used to like to joke that this might have been the first time that a video game scored better with the critics than did the film it was based on. I don't think the Pixar team found that to be very funny. Anyway, after Cars 2, the development team at Avalanche moved on to an even bigger project, Disney Infinity. Now, even though I personally had fewer interactions with John Lasseter during the development of Disney Infinity than I had on Cars 2, his involvement in the success of the game cannot be overstated. Bringing all the different properties from across the Walt Disney Company to play together in the same universe was something that had never been done before. In fact, it was something that would have been impossible had not John Lasseter got behind the project and helped to sell it internally. Furthermore, and not widely publicized, but the look and the design of the figures themselves was something that John Lasseter was involved in. It was John's love of toys coupled with his insight to make all of the various figures from the different Disney properties look like they came from the same collection that made Disney Infinity possible. Without Lasseter as its champion within the Disney organization, I doubt that Disney Infinity could have ever been made. So, given this little bit of background, I'm sure how you can see how both I and many of the other game developers who had worked with John felt when we learned of the recent allegations. It was almost like learning that one of your friends had been accused. It was shocking, disappointing, and ultimately heartbreaking. At first, there was very little information regarding what it was that John Lasseter was alleged to have done. As reported by the Washington Post in their story from November the 21st, in a new sexual misconduct scandal that could shake the economics of Hollywood in unprecedented ways, Disney said Tuesday that animation chief John Lasseter would be taking a 6-month leave of absence starting immediately. The company acknowledged unspecified missteps via a statement from the executive, but The Hollywood Reporter, which broke the story, cited allegations that Lasseter had made unwanted contact with numerous female colleagues and collaborators over a period of years. Lasseter is one of the most important figures in modern entertainment, and a scandal that sidelines him could have more far-reaching implications for the industry than many of the other revelations of sexual misconduct that have shaken Hollywood over the past 6 weeks. It's been brought to my attention that I have made some of you feel disrespected or uncomfortable. That was never my intent, Lasseter wrote in a memo to his staff Tuesday, saying that it's never easy to face your missteps, but it's the only way to learn from them. He added that he especially wanted to apologize to anyone who has ever been on the receiving end of an unwanted hug or any other gesture they felt crossed the line in any way, shape, or form. No matter how benign my intent, everyone has the right to set their own boundaries and have them respected. Citing a 6-month sabbatical, Lasseter closed the letter to employees saying he looked forward to working together again in the new year. It remains unclear whether Disney could extend the leave or make it permanent. The company released a short statement late Tuesday saying that it is committed to maintaining an environment in which all employees are respected and empowered to do their best work. We appreciate John's candor and sincere apology and fully support his sabbatical. And that was about all we knew for a week. The wording around the whole thing seemed vague and delicate. I couldn't help but wonder exactly what it was that John had done. How many people had he harmed? Would there be subsequent criminal charges? Just how far had one of my personal heroes fallen? Then, about a week later, more articles, like this one from Deadline Hollywood, appeared. It included some details about the allegations. He's very tactile in a weird way, said one former female executive who, like others, spoke with Deadline on condition that she not be named in the story for fear of reprisals. He would rub my leg in a meeting. It was creepy and weird. It got to the point where I wouldn't sit next to him in a meeting because it undermined everything I said. Lasseter was observed passionately kissing a female subordinate at a 2010 Miramax party, according to an executive who witnessed the amorous display and another source who corroborated the account. The incident at the Oscar night celebration, attended by celebrities and Pixar and Disney executives, prompted high-level discussions about Lasseter's conduct. 2 sources recounted Lasseter's obsession with the young character actresses portraying Disney's fairies, a product line built around the character of Tinkerbell. At the animator's insistence, Disney flew the women to a New York event. One Pixar employee became the designated escort as Lasseter took the young women out drinking one night and to a party the following evening. He was inappropriate with the fairies, said the former Pixar executive, referring to physical contact that included long hugs. We had to have someone make sure he wasn't alone with them. One female executive with Disney's Consumer Products Group found herself the focus of Lasseter's attention, say sources who observed their interactions. During one trip to New York City for the annual toy fair, Lasseter and a group of executives met in the lobby of Trump International Hotel and decided to go out for a nightcap. As the group walked out onto Columbus Circle, One person saw Lasseter pull the female executive tightly to him and move his hands over her body. The female executive later sought to laugh off the encounter, saying she didn't think her job description included being groped by John Lasseter, the Observer said. But you could tell she was pissed. The woman subsequently left Disney and did not respond to emails and calls seeking comment. Now, I had a lot of mixed feelings when I learned of these additional details. On the one hand, I agreed that what John had done was inappropriate and wrong. He had clearly overstepped professional boundaries and potentially abused his position as a powerful Hollywood executive. But on the other hand, I felt a little bit of a sense of relief. As far as the reports had thus far indicated, John hadn't done anything that would qualify as criminal. None of the allegations indicated that he had been overtly sexual with anyone, nor that he had engaged in anything involving private trysts or prostitution, or anything approaching what might be termed a casting couch level of misconduct. It was, as Variety magazine summed it up, a number of ex-employees described Lasseter as an overgrown boy with a limited sense of boundaries. Some told Variety that he would make inappropriate comments about women or touch them on their legs or backs. Some described receiving hugs that went on a few seconds too long. There is a currency there. The currency is touch, and being touched by this person who is always in charge, said another former Pixar employee, it's personal and intimate and probably not appropriate. I thought about saying something when these details emerged. I wanted to note that any sexually harassing behavior is bad, but that there are also degrees of bad based upon the harm that is done. It is one thing to threaten a woman with dire career consequences if she won't have sex with him in his hotel room and then badger her until she acquiesces. And it is another to clumsily hug a woman too long or hold her too tightly while in a public place. The first type of behavior is one that cries out for justice. The second is closer to something that cries out for a recognition of wrongdoing, a sincere apology, and a correction of any future such behavior. In other words, what John Lasseter is accused of is not even in the same universe of harm as is that of Harvey Weinstein. But I didn't say anything. I was afraid that if I did try to make such a distinction of degrees of misconduct within the climate of #MeToo, that I might be accused of providing shelter for sexual predators or of being some kind of a rape apologist. After all, I'm a white male myself, and so my mere existence is assumed to be part of the problem. And so, I remained silent. But then I saw Ms. Berlinski's article. She put to words many of the same thoughts that I've been having. Now, it's a rather long article, so I'm just going to quote a few excerpts, but I encourage you to follow the link in the notes below and read it all for yourself. Something is troubling me. Recently, I saw a friend, a man, pilloried on Facebook for asking if #MeToo is going too far. No, said his female interlocutors. Women have endured far too many years of harassment, humiliation, and injustice. We'll tell you when it's gone too far. But I'm part of that we, and I say it is going too far. Mass hysteria has set in. It has become a classic moral panic, one that is ultimately as dangerous to women as to men. But speak I must. It now takes only one accusation to destroy a man's life. Just one, for him to be tried and sentenced in the court of public opinion, overnight costing him his livelihood and social respectability. We are on a frenzied extrajudicial Warlock Hunt that does not pause to parse the difference between rape and stupidity. The punishment for sexual harassment is so grave that clearly this crime, like any other serious crime, requires an unambiguous definition. We have nothing of the sort. Revolutions against real injustice have a tendency, however, to descend into paroxysms of vengeance that descend upon guilty and innocent alike. We're getting too close. Hysteria is in the air. The overbroad definition of sexual harassment is a well-known warning sign. The overbroad language of the law of suspects portended the descent of the French Revolution into the Terror. This revolution risks going the way that revolutions so often do, and the consequences will not just be awful for men, they will be awful for women. We now have, in effect, a crime that comes with a swift and draconian penalty, but no proper definition. It seems to be sexual behavior, or behavior that might be sexual, committed through word, deed, or even facial expression, followed by a negative description of the woman's emotions. Obviously, this is inadequate. Human beings, male and female, are subject to human failings, including the tendency to lie, to be vengeful, to abuse power, or simply to misunderstand one another. It is hard to define sexual harassment precisely, because all of these human frailties are often involved. But we must nonetheless reason out together a definition that makes sense. Mass hysteria and making demons of men will get us nowhere we should want to go. We are a culture historically disposed to moral panics and sexual hysterias. Not long ago, we firmly convinced ourselves that our children were being ritually raped by Satanists. In recent years, especially, we have become prone to replacing complex thought with shallow slogans. We live in times of extremism and black and white thinking. We should have the self-awareness to suspect that the events of recent weeks may not be an aspect of our growing enlightenment, but rather our growing enamorment with extremism. Given the events of recent weeks, we can be certain of this. From now on, men with any instinct for self-preservation will cease to speak of anything personal, anything sexual, in our presence. They will make no bawdy jokes when we are listening. They will adopt in our presence great deference to our exquisite sensitivity and frailty. Many women seem positively joyful at this prospect. The revolution has at last been achieved. But how could this be the world we want? Isn't this the world we escaped? Women, I'm begging you, think this through. We are fostering a climate in which men legitimately fear us, where their entire professional and personal lives can be casually destroyed by secret lists compiled by accusers they cannot confront, by rumors on the internet, by thrilled, breathless reporting denouncing one after another of them as a pig, often based only on the allegation that they did something all too human and none too criminal, like making a lewd joke. Why would we even want men to be subject to such strenuous, arduous taboos against the display of their sexuality? These taboos, note carefully, resemble in non-trivial ways those that have long oppressed women. In a world with such arduous taboos about male purity and chastity, surely it is rational for men to have as little to do with women as possible. What's in this for us? No woman in her right mind would say, I want the old world back. We know what that meant for women. Nor would we even consciously think it. But perhaps instead, we are fantasizing that the old world has come back, rather than confronting something a great deal more frightening. It's never coming back. We are the grown-ups now. We are in charge. Maybe it doesn't matter where the sources of the present moral panic lie, but could we at least get enough of a grip to realize that it is a moral panic and knock it off? Women, I'm begging you, please. Now, I must admit that I have only a faint understanding of the allegations against John Lasseter, and I concede my tremendous ignorance of all the facts. It may be that there are more to come, and that dark days still lie ahead. So rather than trying to defend John Lasseter from a position of ignorance, allow me instead to defend him from a position of hope. My hope is that there are no new allegations to come and that the worst is over. My hope is that John will recognize the harm he has done and then work to make amends and seek the forgiveness of those who he has wronged. My hope is that in the process of doing so, John will acknowledge the weaknesses within himself and strive to correct them, with an eye not only towards looking back, but also forwards to the future. My hope is that John can grow and learn from his mistakes to become a better person. But I also hope that we, in turn as a society, are willing to forgive him. I hope that we can come to agree that our world is made better and brighter by continuing to have the heart and mind of John Lasseter as a part of it. and that given time, we can also come to delight once again in the creative work that he brings to us. My hope is that this is not the end for John Lasseter. It is rather an opportunity for a new beginning.